I am here with Victor Jacques from VAJ Design. Victor, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me, Ayana.
Tell me a little bit about VAJ Design. What do you guys do?
So VAJ Design is a design and branding agency, and so we serve as the dedicated design team for our clients.
And who's your target client?
Our ideal clients are medium and large size companies and organizations who have conferences, websites, web applications, a social media presence, and more that all require ongoing design work.
Okay. What type of design essentially then do you do? You do only for conferences or logos? If I need a logo for a business, what type of things do you do?
So all of the above. So think of it this way. Our clients are companies that would benefit from hiring full-time designers and developers, but who have not done that. And so we would serve that purpose. So anything that they need to do for their conferences, their internal design, their products and services, their events, their courses, all of those things would be handled by their internal team. If they don't have that team, then we serve that purpose for them.
Okay. So imagine if I'm a small business, I'm getting off the ground. Do you think I need design? Would I need your services? Because obviously my budget might be smaller. How do you work with somebody like me that is a small business?
So small businesses, we can do some foundational design work for that business to help get you off the ground. Something like your logo, your brand guide, maybe some templates that you can use for your social media and your website design and development of your website. That could be something, if you have a smaller budget, that we can get you kind of off the ground in that way. And then as business grows and you have the budget to have, to pay for, ongoing services, then we can serve that purpose at that point. But really, design is one of those things that requires time and requires work and revision. So as your brand evolves over time, as you test out different things, you want to test out different visuals for, events, things you have going on your website, new content, your social media, things that work better. You want your brand to evolve and grow. And so that requires ongoing design work. A lot of people think that once you have these things, then you're done. It's like, oh, this thing is done, I checked all those boxes, and now it's out there. But the reality is that good design takes time and needs to be worked and refined on an ongoing basis. So you really want to have a dedicated team to do that.
I know a lot of people have been talking about being resourceful and perhaps using Canva to try to design things on their own, or even going on Fiverr and getting something done for super cheap. Talk a little bit about kind of why hiring somebody like you is better than, using a Canva or using a Fiverr.
Sure. So those tools, I think that it's fine to use those tools to get things off the ground, especially if you don't really have the budget to bring on a full team. But those tools have limitations, and a lot of times it really doesn't provide you with the full breadth of what trained designers bring to the table, and those tools are not as robust as the tools that we use. So Canva, for example, we do work in Canva for clients that really require it. Let's say you have a few social media templates. It's a recurring thing that happens weekly or monthly or whatnot, and the only thing that needs to change is the text. We could do a Canva template so that, the client could go in and make that change on their own, so they don't have to have us do it. Things like that I would recommend, but I wouldn't recommend folks using those tools just from scratch and just kind of dabbling in there, because one of the things about design that it's not really just a purely aesthetic field. It's actually a scientific field as well. So the principles of design are things that were discovered and developed over time through testing and experimentation and finding out what works and what doesn't work, finding out what types of things get people confused or making them feel like they're a little bit of overload, or what type of contrast makes things unreadable for folks. Like, there's a lot of design principles that you learn in school. And so I would definitely recommend having trained designers working on your visual brand if you really want to be on that level. It's a reason why large companies don't use, if you think about it, if Canva was a true replacement for a designer, all designers would be out of business right now. Nobody would be hiring a designer. They would just say, oh, we'll just have my personal assistant be my designer now, or my, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's not really the case. Companies are investing in hiring full-time, formally trained designers to work on their visual brand. And so what we do is we serve that purpose for those companies that have not hired that full-time staff. We can take that take that place at a fraction of the cost, by the way.
Do you work with companies that already have internal creative teams that may not necessarily be able to do the full scope of work that is necessarily needed for them? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, we can plug into a company's existing team if they have one already. That's no problem at all. We can support them. It'll be a supplement to what they already have going on. And if there are any gaps that need to be filled as far as like making sure that the brand is fully established across the board, we can help with that as well. Or if it's something that's already fully established, then we can plug in and let us know exactly what your brand guides are, and we can work with that for whatever additional things you need.
I'll ask you something a little bit more personal. Like, what excites you most about design?
So what excites me about design is actually having a positive impact on people's business, and doing that through something that I was trained in. So my journey, as I mentioned, I didn't really understand what design was until I went to school for it. But I was always an artistic person. So, I excelled in art, science, and math. Those were my subjects in school growing up. When I went to school, I just wanted to try and find something that would allow me to combine all those subjects together in one field. And so it kind of took me a little bit, but eventually I came around to design. And when I finally got into school for it, I assumed that I could just do anything that was creative because I could draw, I could sketch. And so I'm like, okay, I could be a designer, I could be an architect, I could be a computer animator, I could be an illustrator, I could be anything in that artistic field. I just assumed that I could do. And I assumed that it was all subjective, just a matter of taste, a matter of opinion, teach me a few things and I could do it. What I learned was that that's not what design is at all. Design, as I mentioned before, there are like actual design principles. There is such thing as bad design and good design. It's not just a matter of subjectivity. So when I learned that, I was like, oh, wow, this is fascinating. And this is something that actually has a tangible impact on business. So I enjoy doing it. I enjoy teaching others about it, showing others about it, educating them on it, and also contributing to the growth and the success of that business. I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's, it's kind of like how it started and how I got here.
No, I think that's important so that we can understand why you're so passionate kind of about design. I know some companies, they like to hire for ad hoc work, right? And I know, in us talking previously, you mentioned how important it is to have kind of full-time design, in-house design team. So talk a little bit about why having somebody in-house is better than kind of hiring somebody for more ad hoc projects.
Sure, that's a great question. There's a few downsides to working in an ad hoc way, a per project basis. One of the main things is design, unfortunately, is one of those things that kind of put it on the back burner a little bit with a lot of businesses, because some businesses unfortunately don't really understand the value of good design. So they're not proactively thinking about it. They're not necessarily investing a lot in it. And so they're thinking about it when they need it. So if they're like, okay, well, we have a conference coming up. We need X, Y, and Z for this conference. We need some graphics. We need a landing page. We need blah, blah, blah. They're only thinking about that at that time. And so what happens is a lot of times your design team is working under tight time constraints. And tight time constraints in many ways is the enemy of good design. As I mentioned before, good design actually takes time, takes work and rework. So sometimes people think, oh, okay, well, I need a logo done by this week, by the end of the week. Well, a logo being done at the end of the week is, you can get lucky maybe and have a really well-designed logo done at the end of the week. But the reality is some of the biggest brands, even if it's just something simple, like something just typographic, they probably spent a lot of time and money doing that. I mean, like weeks, if not months, and a lot of different revisions, a lot of different testing, a lot of playing around with color, contrast, application in different ways. There was a lot that went into it. So people look at a logo and they say, okay, that was easy. I could have made that in Canva or in Word. It could take me 15 minutes. Well, a professional design team took months. You just didn't realize that because you didn't see the number of revisions that it took. You didn't see the 40 or 50 or 60 or 100 different versions and all the little tinkering they did to get to where they got. And large companies are investing on doing that. And if it wasn't worth it, they wouldn't be doing it. So there is value in investing and spending the time. And so if you're working on a per project ad hoc basis, you're always going to be capped because you're working against time constraint, and you're not really going to allow your design to really just be fully fleshed out and really carefully crafted.
So you're essentially saying kind of bring in design early so it could be part of the strategic plans. So if you have in the course of a year, 10 events coming up, you'll know design is needed for XYZ events so that you can be more proactive and strategic in how you kind of design for events and so forth.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is even if you don't have a clear calendar for all the things you have coming up, you have some idea of the types of things you have coming up. So okay, well, we're definitely going to maybe do a couple conferences this year. We definitely need to think about maybe revising our website in certain ways. We have a couple products and services that we want to launch soon, right? So your design team should proactively be working on at least some loose template of what that could look like. And so it could be like, okay, well, we have your conference going up. Well, we already know, based off of everything we've been doing for you thus far, you have an established brand. So we know your fonts, your color scheme, we know your tagline, we know like the short descriptions of the premium services, all that type of thing. So we can proactively start working on, okay, well, this is your retractable banner, this is the tablecloth, this is the landing page. All these things can at least be in progress in an early stage before all those details are worked out. So then when it does come up, now it's like, oh, we got a conference. These are the things. Now we've finalized the products and services that we want to promote. This is the date, this is the time, all of those things. Okay, well, this project's already in progress. So now, instead of us trying to get something out the door real quick, we've already been working on it. And so now it's already in a relatively strong place. And so it's much less work for us to get it to a really great place and finalize for you.
I think that sounds really amazing, but it sounds expensive. So if I am, again, I think I referenced a small business starting out, at what phase do I need to plug in somebody like you, especially if I'm working with a very, very small budget?
Sure. So I would say it really just kind of depends on where your funds are and how quickly you can get them there. So we have retainer packages that a company can look at. They could just look at it and say, okay, well, they have 3-4 tiers of packages. If we want to look at starting at the lowest one, when can we get there? So that's more of for a business to really be able to determine on their end. They can just look and say, okay, well, at $9.99 a month, I can't afford that yet, but 6 months from now or a year from now, I can afford that. But for now, let me just start with getting my visual brand, a solid logo, a solid color scheme, a brand guide, my website or landing page, and maybe some templates for my social media graphics just to get me going. So it's not going to be something that is constantly being worked and refined and perfected over time. It's going to be pretty static during that time, but that's fine. Get to a place where revenue is increasing, and then when you can afford it, then bring on a team to work on a recurring basis, and then that's just going to help to continue to grow the business and increase revenue.
I think that definitely makes sense. I'll ask you kind of a question tied to, and just to wrap this up, branding. Like, how often should a brand update their logo? We recently saw PayPal. I don't know if you saw the PayPal rebrand of their logo, and it's like you changed something that was familiar to everybody else, and it's pretty much just text. Right? So what are your thoughts on that? Just curious.
So, all right. So I got a couple thoughts on this. As far as why you should rebrand or when, the times change. What's considered good design actually does kind of change over time. And so you can tell by looking at something that it came from a certain time. Like Coca-Cola, for example, hasn't really updated their logo in a long time, but it looks like it's something from the 50s. It's just so iconic, it's so big that, they don't necessarily need to bother. PayPal didn't really need to bother.
They didn't. I didn't think so, because the brand is established already.
Right, right. So it's not necessarily a requirement. Once you get to a certain level, it's not necessarily a requirement, but it is something that can help to give it a more modern look, because a more modern, polished look does kind of affect how people feel about the brand. It's like, ooh, it's new, nice, right? And it's also something to promote and push. Oh, check out, it's like a conversation starter. It's something that catches people's attention in all the different ways that it rolls out, right? Your logo is like the visual foundation of your visual brand. So a lot of times it may have a larger ripple effect. So it's a new logo, but it's also new these other things. So all these other things are also being updated as well. So it's kind of like this new refresh, this push that gets out there. Some logos really have benefited some businesses have benefited greatly from a redesign. If you look at GoDaddy, for example, GoDaddy's gone through like maybe 6 or 7 logos. A lot of people don't realize it, but if you look back at like their old logos, I mean, I'm pretty sure they had like one of their developers just go in and like maybe doodle something in Microsoft Word or something like that. But as the company grew, it didn't make any sense to keep something like that. You want to rebrand. You know, it kind of just depends. And honestly, when you get to a certain point, some of the branding like rules or best practices, some of them can be laxed a little bit. So for example, like Nike and Apple, they can use their logo mark, like just the graphic part without the words, and it's recognizable. Some people think that Nike swoosh is the Nike logo. It is not. The full logo includes the word Nike. The full Apple logo includes the word Apple. The name actually is a crucial part of your logo. People need to see your logo and be able to read it and know what your thing is. Relying only on that visual element is not really something that is a good idea. Again, unless you get to a point where your worldwide brand, your recognizability is so big that you can just go ahead and say like, we're just gonna go ahead and
like
just
a McDonald's. Every
Exactly.
kid growing up at M,
Exactly.
you know, they want
Exactly.
McDonald's when they see it. So changing that probably might not be ideal for somebody like a McDonald's, especially that has that establishment. What logo would you change? Of all the logos that's out there, what needs a refresh?
Of like the really big ones? That's a good question. I think maybe Amazon. Amazon's is okay. I would probably refresh that. I don't think it needs to be refreshed that bad. Let's see, the biggest brands, I don't know.
Or anything that you've seen that you're like, yeah, this probably could do with a good refresh, even if they're not as big.
So I actually have a lot of criticisms of more, not so much the logos, but the actual interfaces and the user experiences of a lot of big tools. So Facebook is a hot mess. From a navigation standpoint, from a UX standpoint, people are just used to it, right? It's so big. Instead of optimizing the user experience, you just know that people are basically, they feel like there's no choice but to use it. So they're just figuring out, they're just working it. Amazon is another one. The Amazon website is a hot mess from a navigation standpoint.
The app or the web page?
The web, both, but the website more. The website needs a lot of work. Even Zoom, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but I'll just give one specific example with Zoom. The Zoom chat feature is
within the application.
Is archaic. You can't reply to people, like the reply is a
private.
Well, you just select a name from a drop down and then you just put it in the chat. People don't know that you've messaged them unless they see, wait a minute, my drop down now is set to somebody's specific name, which means they probably messaged me. So now I got to scroll back up and look for like that little red text to let me know. From a UX standpoint, user experience standpoint, you know, I've worked on building and designing large scale applications that would never pass. I mean, they'd be like, yo, no, you can't have it like that. You know, you got to have something that is clearer that you're chatting with a group or you're chatting with an individual, like a specific DM, and work out that interface. Zoom was just something that blew up so quickly during COVID that it became the default, the industry default, so that everybody started using it. So sometimes when these companies get so big that they're less bound to really having good design in certain ways and the best user experience, because it's like, you know, we're the default. But you know, eventually, a lot of times they do get around to it. The Zoom improves their features often. I haven't seen Amazon doing much. Oh, another quick thing. Amazon, until recently, did not have a name or a picture of a product when you ordered it. That order confirmation email, when you go on and order something, you would just get that long serial number. And I was always complaining about it. It's like, I don't know, has no one noticed when you order something off of Amazon that you have no idea what you ordered? It's just this long string of numbers and letters.
Noticed.
Well, it just recently changed. Within less than a year now, maybe a little bit more than a year, it actually has a photo and the actual name of the thing. I'm like, what took them so long? Any out of the box like e-commerce site that you use now, if you want to get on Shopify or Squarespace or, you know, even Wix, which I wouldn't recommend, but all of those things. There's e-commerce tools, the e-commerce functionality that's plugged into it. It automatically has a built-in email confirmation that's triggered, that's sent to the user upon purchase. And it's going to have a picture, and it's going to have the name of the product and the price and, you know, all the other details that they need. I don't what took Amazon so long. But Amazon's so big that they can just get away with that, right? But as a smaller company, it's better to follow as many best practices as possible.
So what you're essentially saying is like build and design with the customer in mind, right? That customer experience in mind.
Absolutely.
And that's something that you and your team could help with.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the foundations of design, is that our personal aesthetic preference doesn't necessarily align with good design. So sometimes people they want their designer to execute what they're visualizing and what they personally like. Now, you should at least like, to a degree, your brand, but your personal, if that hasn't been run by anybody, if you haven't like put that out there and say, well, this is what I personally like, let's tweak it this way, yeah, that looks better to me, that looks better to you, but that might not be good design. And when you put that out there, there's still going to be people who have a similar taste to you and like it, or might not have, aren't very receptive to whether or not something is well designed or not in the first place. But there are a lot of people who do respond to that, even if it's subconsciously. That's part of the why design is what it is. And so if you have subpar design in some way, you are missing out on business, because people are going to pass by you. You might not necessarily notice it, because it might not be something you could track on a bounce rate on a page, but it could be people just driving by you on maybe your storefront. They're driving by your storefront and you don't have any way of tracking that. So bad design is hurting. Everywhere that bad design is being used, it's hurting the business.
Do you educate people on, okay, if I have this look that I want, do you then educate them and say, well, while that might be your own preference, design-wise, it may not help to drive eyeballs in the way that you want to. So do you inform and educate your clients on that kind of pushback? Okay.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you win some battles and some battles you don't.
I was just about to say that. Sometimes I'm like, I win some battles, lose some. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to bully anybody. We're going to deliver what is asked of us. But I will push back on anything that is not best practice from a user experience standpoint or from well-designed standpoint.
Okay. For our last 30 seconds, we can just do a real quick rapid fire based on just kind of logo and brands. Sure. So Chick-fil-A or McDonald's?
Chick-fil-A.
Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Facebook or Instagram? They're the same company, but look and design-wise.
Instagram.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much, or thank you so much, rather.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure. Our website is vajdesign.com.
Okay, well, lovely. Well, thank you again.
Thank you very much.